if you are a parent and you're trying to build a business, this episode hopefully will be incredibly valuable for you. I have been broke living with my in-laws. In fact, we lived with my in-laws for 4 years while I built the business. And we actually had our first child while we were living with our in-laws. And right when I had my first kid is when the business slowly started to take off. So I've gone from broke to a multi-million-dollar business while raising, growing, starting a family with my wife. And now we have 3 kids and a multi-million-dollar business. And I have learned a lot of lessons about how to balance the two, how to determine where my time goes and how things can adjust and change, and even how to raise my kids to be not necessarily successful, but how to be happy and have everything that they want. And I want to share those lessons with you today on this podcast. There's 8 of them. I have a lot more to share. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. If that's interesting to you, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're getting back to the roots of the podcast. You know, the name of the podcast is New Generation Entrepreneur because when I first started out the podcast, I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship in this next generation and how we should be teaching entrepreneurship, or at least exposing kids to the idea of entrepreneurship. At a very minimum, teaching them the values of what makes you successful as an entrepreneur, because that was going to help you in life no matter what you do. And I believe that to my core. I believe the traits that make you a great entrepreneur, things like critical thinking, understanding yourself, turning off the external world, having personal power, confidence, taking risks, knowing how to market, how to communicate, like all of these values and skills that we can sort of learn through entrepreneurship will make you great at no matter what you do. I believe that if you go into the corporate world or have a job and you don't want to be an entrepreneur, having the same traits of like gratefulness, everything I just listed, including things like gratefulness and appreciation and knowing how to build rapport, like everything that makes you a great entrepreneur. If you knew that, you will succeed even as an employee. I believe that to my core. And that comes from a place of, having a team, hiring and building a team from nothing, and just seeing like who I would promote or who I want to give raises to, or, who I would trust more or lean on more. I look at people on my team that have this, and I look at it, I'm like, wow, these people have this. My team has the same traits of what makes a really good entrepreneur. And if they don't, they actually start to adapt and mold to having those traits and developing and building those traits, which is why they're still on the team, because they're great at what they do. And so what I wanted to do is talk about more of that on the podcast. I wanted to talk more about the next generation, the new generation. And so what had happened is when I started the podcast 4 years ago, I was like, this is where I want to go. This is part of my deeper purpose. My deeper purpose is like working with kids in this next generation and setting them up for success and all of that stuff. And, like what I do today didn't exist 10 years ago. And I hear time and time again of parents who are like complaining that their kids want to be a YouTuber when they grow up. And I'm like, you know what? That's just the reality of the world we grow up in. And I am well aware that even what my kids do for a living won't even exist. It doesn't even exist now. And much like what I do today for a living didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. And so it's like, how do we prepare our kids for that future? How do we prepare the next generation for, something that we have no idea what it's going to look like? You don't know what the jobs are going to look like. In fact, a lot of jobs that people are going to school for right now won't even exist in 10 to 20 years with AI and automation and machines. Like just in the last 10 years, we've seen so much change. We've seen like self-checkout stands at grocery stores, at Home Depot, fast food restaurants. I've literally seen machines that can flip burgers and make fries and inside of actual restaurants. AI is like slowly replacing a lot of jobs as well. Just in our industry alone, just so much is changing and getting replaced. But the beautiful part about that is that with all of this change and all these jobs going away, it means there's going to be an open world of new jobs, things that haven't existed yet. And so, like it breaks my heart to hear like these kids so happy and enthusiastic about being a YouTuber, and their parents like shoot them down. And it's like, well, I mean, I can't think of anything better than my kid to be passionate about something and create content on it all day long and get paid really well for it. Like that just, I would want that for my kids. And I think we have to, at some point, start having this conversation of like, how do we adapt to the educational system and how do we adapt how we raise our kids? And I believe that us as entrepreneurs, we need to start paving that way. And so what I wanted to do today, and what I've been doing today actually, is reaching out to a lot of entrepreneurs who have kids. Some of them had kids and then started a business. Some of them had started a business and then had kids. So we will have more people like that coming onto the podcast. I'm excited to have those conversations. We have Carrie Green coming back on the podcast in the next month or two. And she actually started her business, then had kids, and now has two, I think. Is it three? No, I think she has two. I think she's a boy and a girl. And we're going to have a conversation about like business and family and kids and how do you balance the two and what lessons have we learned. And I'm inviting some more of my parent entrepreneur friends onto the podcast. So we'll start integrating a lot more. And it's really funny. This is actually the direction I've been wanting to head for a while. And, maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll make it a new segment. So like maybe on Fridays we'll do parent episodes and on Tuesdays we'll do our normal episodes. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just see where it goes and where it takes us. But I'm excited to do it because when I started this 40 years ago, that was the intention. And we've been kind of dancing in that field a little bit. But then all of a sudden I realized, wow, messaging is really what I'm good at. and like it became my new passion over the last 4 years. And so that's what we've been talking about is like marketing and messaging and communication. And, like my deeper purpose, my reason for being on this planet at this moment in time has not shifted. I'm like, all right, it's time to start talking about the new generation and possibilities for them and kids and all that stuff. And so what I wanted to do today is I just wanted to kick that direction off with a new episode titled, when I originally wrote it, it was 6 lessons for building a business with kids, but it's more like, I think let's scroll here. I think it's 8 lessons. And so what I wanted to do is just talk about some lessons that I've learned in building a multi-million-dollar business from literally nothing to like broke living with my in-laws. In fact, we had our firstborn kid while we lived. We had our first kid, our son, when we lived, with my in-laws. And so we were actually living with them when we had the, numero uno. And so I've learned a lot of lessons because again, I had no money. We were broke, wasn't really making any money. Slowly started to make money like right when my first was born. And then we went from like living with in-laws to renting a house to owning a house to moving across, states, moving out of state, all while building a multi-million-dollar business. And so I've learned a lot of lessons. I've made a lot of mistakes. And what I want to do is I want to share some of these lessons that I've learned over the years of building a business while having a family. And I am coming from a place, again, I only teach from experience and I only really like to teach from the knowing. And I don't like to give advice because you need to make your own decisions, but I do like to at least give my perspective from my experience to help you make decisions, hopefully leading to outcomes that you want. And I think it's going to be really helpful for you to understand where I am right now in life and where I was when I started this whole journey. So right now, for those of you that don't know, we have a multi-million-dollar business selling courses and programs. And we were mostly on the launch model, and now we're kind of like an open enrollment model. My son is 9, my daughters are 6 and 3. And I didn't have any kids when I started the business, but as soon as we had our first, that's when we started to make some money. And so I've been going from that place of 0 to where we are now, and while having a family. And so with that also being said, where I'm at right now is I probably work anywhere to 20 to 40 hours a week. I do not work more than 40 hours a week. I have not worked more than 40 hours a week in a really long time, probably years. And that, again, that goes back to some of the lessons that I'm going to share with you. Like I will not do that. I will not work more than 40 hours a week unless something drastic like happened, like my business is going bankrupt or something. And I'm forced to do it. And we'll talk about that as well. Like I have rules and I have laws of how I operate and my business and with my family and how I integrate the two. And so that's kind of where we're at today. And we are at roughly like 2.5 million a year in revenue. And our goal, which I think we'll be able to hit within the next 12 months, is to be at 5 million. And I think we will definitely be there based off of where we're going right now. With that being said, I also do work weekends from time to time, but I also will like take that time off during the week, so like, again, my 40 hours is dispersed throughout the week. I don't see weekends and weekdays all that differently, other than the fact that my kids are off on the weekends. But sometimes I'll sneak in like an hour in the morning, like while my wife is still sleeping and the kids are like watching their morning cartoons or something like that. Or I'll go sit with them and outline stuff on my iPad while they watch a cartoon, or they want to go outside and play, and I'll have my iPad with me and I'll outline some stuff. So that's kind of what my life looks like now. And to go from like broke, no kids, to multi-million-dollar business with great family life, here are the great lessons, the great eight lessons that I have learned along the way. The first one is you have to accept the fact that you're going to mess up. If you're coming into this saying, I'm going to build a business and I'm going to raise a family, even if you're not a business owner, but you just have a family, you're going to mess up. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought I was just going to be perfect and everything was going to be jolly and I was going to be fine. And no, you're going to mess up, and you're going to mess up a lot. Some mess ups are going to be greater than others. And you're going to mess up with not only like disappoint yourself, you're probably going to disappoint your kids. They're going to get mad at you. You're probably going to disappoint or mess up with your spouse. It's going to happen. It's just a part of life. And so for me, one of the things that was really hard for me is that I would beat myself up. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I should have handled things differently. I should have whatever. And you could play the should have game all day long if you want. That's totally fine. But you get absolutely no benefit from playing the should have game and not accepting the fact that you're not perfect. And when you do mess up, beating yourself up, playing it over and over again in your head doesn't help. So what I have realized is there's a couple things that need to happen. Number one is if you do mess up with your kids, or you mess up with your spouse, or you mess up, sometimes you're going to mess up with your team. Like it's just going to happen. Sometimes you're going to promise your team something and tell them that something is going to happen. And then there's an emergency with like the family, or you decided, what, my son or my daughter really needs me today. I'm going to have to delay this, and you're going to mess up. Like you're going to be out of integrity on your word. You're going to have to break promises and things like that. And sometimes you have to make a choice of like, well, who's going to get priority of me keeping their promise? Because there's going to be times where you promise a couple different things and they don't align. It can't work out. And so what I have found is that apologizing is the best thing you can do. So when something gets messed up, even if it's not your fault, or it was out of your control, like all of a sudden you have to go to the hospital or something like that, right? Because your kid gets sick, or maybe you promised your kids that you were going to go ride their bikes with them, and then a huge emergency popped up at work and you have to go. The number one thing that you should do, what I realize is apologize, because when we apologize and explain the whole situation of what's going on, your kids are actually a lot more adaptable than you might think they are. But they also understand, they start to understand like, okay, my dad said he's going to do this, but now he's not here. And they're not left wondering, and they're not left coming up with their own conclusions or their own thoughts, or they're not letting their nervous system take them all over into these emotions. Sometimes it still happens, but when we sit down and go like, look, here's what I promised you, here's the situation, and I really apologize, I have to do this. And you can make it up, you can do something else, you can do whatever you want. and they handle it a lot differently, a lot better. But the one thing that I realized and I'm really proud about and really happy about that I've been able to do is it normalizes apologizing. And again, I don't think people should have to apologize for everything in their life. But when your kids can see a parent, a full grown parent, express deep, sorrow and be able to explain, I would rather be with you. I would rather be here more than anything in the world. But if I don't do this, here's the consequence I'm going to have to face and could disrupt the family. They start to understand, but at the same time, they start to see a parent who can apologize, a parent who can regulate their nervous system, handle their emotions, a parent who takes responsibility for their actions. And again, what I started to realize is that when I apologize to my kids, not only did it normalize messing up, it normalized like I'm not perfect. It normalized great communication as well. And so I see it from time to time where people come in and they get very defensive, like, you promise your kids you're going to ride their bike with them. And then all of a sudden something comes up at work and you just go do that. And you never explain to them what happened. You never explain to them why something is happening or what's going to happen, or you never communicate with them. And what it starts to do, and then if they ask you about it, you snap at them, you yell at them, I'm doing this for you and I have to do it and you don't understand and blah, 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 blah. It starts to negatively impact your kids, especially if they're like ages 0 to 7, because those are the most impressionable years. Those will form so many things in their subconscious that will propel them for the rest of their life in various different directions. And so what I've realized is that when we start to apologize, it normalizes great communication. But the most important thing is it also shows them that you still actually care. Because we've all done things in life, and we've done the things to people that maybe aren't so important to us. Like there are people that on the scale of 1 to 10 don't hold as much value in my life as other people. Like my wife and my family obviously hold high values, but then the next level will be friends, and the next level underneath that would be acquaintances, and the next level, whatever. And I don't say like they don't have value, meaning like they're just bad people. It just means like I value other people in my life other than these people. And so what starts to happen is like when someone goes down on the value scale, you just don't seem to want, like you mess up and you're like, oh, whatever. I don't even know that person. I don't like that person. Like maybe it's just some random person you jumped or bumped into in the store and you're just like in a hurry and you don't apologize to them or whatever. And you move on. You don't think anything of it. And what that shows is you just don't really care enough to go and talk to that person or apologize to that person, or maybe you don't think you messed up. But what I found is that when you have the courage to go and say, look, I messed up, again, it normalizes apologizing so that they understand that it is okay to mess up. It is okay to talk to people. But what it also does is show them that you actually care, that you actually do value them and their opinion and their feelings and all of that stuff. And so sometimes apologizing even means just like sitting there and letting them process their hurt of you breaking your promise or messing up. And that's okay too. And so when we start to normalize it, there's less pressure for them to always have to be perfect and to get stressed out because they're messed up somewhere. And for me, it's just a beautiful thing is I love apologizing. I don't love messing up, but when I do, the very first thing I like doing is apologizing and having those conversations and being that example of what to do when something goes wrong. And what's really interesting is I notice that my kids are a lot more honest when things start to happen. So if they do mess up or they break something, they're not usually hiding it. They're usually saying, Dad, I broke this and I'm really sorry. And here's the situation. And it models great communication. It models how I want to be communicated to as well. So if they see me modeling, apologizing and being upfront and being honest, they see that as normal communication. So then they actually will start to give it back to you in return. Not all the time, but most of the time. It creates a very safe environment for people to make mistakes, which is going to happen. So if you know your family's going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes. Why not try to create a safe environment with it? The next thing is you can't beat yourself up, and you have to have empathy and compassion for yourself, because again, rule number 1 or the lesson number 1 is you're going to mess up. So the fastest way to move out of a mess up is obviously to apologize, but then it's to have compassion for yourself. Do not beat yourself up. It's in the past. It's not in the present. The second it happens, 1 second later, it's in the past. And if you want to keep replaying the past in your head, go for it. You might need to clean up your mess and apologize, but it's in the past. The more you beat yourself up, the less likely you are to be able to move forward and to be able to do it powerfully. So lesson number 1 is just accept the fact that you're going to mess up. Everyone messes up. No one's perfect. You're going to have to learn as you go. And every parent is the same way. We all have to do it. Number 2, and this was a really powerful one for me, and I actually use it for motivation, is to know that your kids are watching you always. They watch when you don't apologize. They watch when you go to work and you follow your passion. They're smarter than you think they are. If you tell them to follow their passion, they can do whatever they want, and then they watch you stuck in a dead-end job that you hate and complaining about your boss, they see that. I want to be able to look my kids in the eyes, and I want to be able to tell them, this is what I was able to do with my life. I am fighting for the time freedom to be able to spend time with you guys. I am fighting to have build ourselves a financial ground so that we can do things that we want. I know that they're watching, and so I'm very careful with what I say I'm going to do and what I tell them I'm going to do and how I describe what I do and all of that stuff. So one of the things about this is that when they start to watch what you do, you have to understand they don't, especially before they go into school, they don't really have a lot to model life off of. So whatever you decide to do or whatever you set is going to be the first model of reality that they have. What I mean by that is my kids have never seen me have to go into an office job. They have no idea what that even is. Like, they have no idea what it looks like for your dad to go and work for someone else. And had I just all of a sudden, they were born and I was 9 to 5, that would be their first model of what reality is. That would be the first model of what life should look like. And so for me, I'm very aware that they are watching me. And I'm also very aware that this may sound a little weird, I don't want my model of life to be the only norm for them. So when we have dinners and we have like family dinner, and we try to do it every night, I talk to them about that stuff. I'm aware of what they're watching and what they're seeing. And I'm aware to let them know, like, this is just the life that we chose and this is the benefits of it. But here's also the sacrifices of it. And here's all the other options. So we talk to them. Other kids' dads, they go and do this. And other people's moms have to both work. And this is what the family looks like. And your mom and I made a choice 10 years ago to not have to do that because we didn't want to. But if that's what you guys want, that is a normal thing. So I'm also aware that they're watching me, but I don't want them to be indoctrinated into it either. So again, I use it for motivation because I know they're watching and I want to set that example so that they get instilled these values. But I also know that they're watching me. And the beautiful part about being an entrepreneur is we get to expose them to the entrepreneurship. So at the same time where I'm going to let them know this is not the only road for you, I'm grateful that I'm able to show them that road by firsthand experience because it exposes them to entrepreneurship. And your kids are going to be exposed to a lot of things, especially as they go into school, as they go into public school, they're going to be exposed to a lot. They're going to be indoctrinated into this idea that they need to go to college, that they have to do this, they're going to have to get a job. They're going to be indoctrinated to a lot. And just by being an entrepreneur, you're going to expose them through something else, through your own experience, which I think, to me, is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So just be aware that they're watching you. They're seeing what you do, and you can use it as motivation. You can use it as motivation to take those risks or go through a really hard time or whatever it is. But at the same time, I'm not a big believer that we should be indoctrinating our kids into being entrepreneurs because not everyone is built and wired to be an entrepreneur, and your kids may not be. And I look at my 3 kids and they are 3 totally separate, different people, even though they're raised by the same people. And I know there are I know for a fact, like the 3-year-old's a little bit too young to really see right now, but I can see from my 6 and 9-year-old, I can tell one of them is wired and designed to be an entrepreneur. The other one, not so much. The other one likes more patterns, consistency, things familiar. It's just how the brain works. And so I'm not going to indoctrinate them into being an entrepreneur, but I'm grateful that I get to expose them to it. And so my philosophy is this. I know my kids are watching. That's rule number 2, right? Law number 2. Your kids are watching. Be careful with what you're doing. Be careful how you talk to yourself. Be careful how you handle risk. Be careful the advice you give them, and make sure the advice you give them is stuff that you're actually doing in your life. However, here's the distinction between indoctrination and letting them make their own decision. I try to expose my kids not necessarily to entrepreneurship other than it being a route, right? So I say, like, here's a different route. Here's what I did. I never say things like, you need to be an entrepreneur. This is what our family does. This is what you're going to do. This is what you should do. I never tell them what they should or shouldn't do. What I do is I expose them and indoctrinate them into values. And what I mean by values is critical thinking, thinking outside the box, staying out of victimhood, making mistakes. What I do is I expose them and indoctrinate them into values that will make them successful no matter what they choose. So I don't indoctrinate them into the path. I indoctrinate them into values, and then they get to choose their own path. And the values that I expose them to and indoctrinate them to will make them successful no matter what path they choose. And a great example of this is every night we do gratefuls. We talk about one thing that we're grateful for. And sometimes they ask the question of why. And so I tell them what gratitude has been able to do for me and what gratitude will be able to do for anyone, regardless of the path you choose in life. And we also do that with the team. So then I talk to them about the team and our employees, and this is what we do inside of our team. Every meeting, we talk about something we're grateful for. And here's what I've seen with my team and things like that. So even if they become a manager or a leader within a different company, instead of being an entrepreneur, again, I'm instilling the values. I'm instilling the traits that no matter what path they choose, they will be successful. So that's number 2. So let's just recap real quick. Number 1 is you'll mess up, have compassion for yourself, apologize, normalize that. Number 2 is they're watching you. So when you don't follow your own dreams or take your own advice, they're watching. At the same time, you can be intentional with what they see. Teach them. What I found valuable is to teach them values, indoctrinate them into values, not necessarily a certain path. The next one that I've learned is to dedicated time to be present. This is one of the biggest mistakes I made in the very beginning because it was hard. I remember right when Lily, my number 2, was born. It was a really difficult time. My wife and I talked about it on the podcast in a past episode, but it was really hard because we were $40,000 in debt. I had negative money to my name, and we were in a pivot. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then Lily was born right around then. And my wife was going through some postpartum depression. We didn't realize it at the time. And I had hired Taylor, and we had launched the Video Forex Effect, which was going to be our first $1 million product. And we launched it as a course, a coaching program, and a service all at the same time. And it was just 2 of us. And it was way too much. And I was working days, I was working nights, and I was working weekends. I just wasn't home. However, I still took time to be with my kids. So I remember on certain days of the week, like, I don't remember, like Tuesdays, let's just say Tuesdays, Jacqueline would go to like Will's school, and she would, go watch William, or, not watch him, but she would like participate in the class and things like that. So I would have Lily on Mondays or whatever day it was for like 2 or 3 hours in the morning. And I would take her running, and I would try to get my exercise in. And so I'd put her in the stroller, and we'd go running, and we'd go to the park. And it was like really cool. It was really fun to have that time with her. But the problem is that it wasn't present time. And so even during it, I'm like answering text or calls, or I'm trying to do things on my phone. And when I look back, it's like I didn't really get anything done during that time anyways, meaning that those responses and those texts and those little things that I was doing from the phone didn't really make a difference. Like I could have smashed them all out in 20 minutes when I got back home. However, what it did is it disrupted the hours that I had with my daughter. And my mind was always on, did they get the text? Did they see the text? What's going on in the business? Oh my gosh, how much stuff do I have to do? Like, and I would get overwhelmed with the to-do list. And it would completely destroy the quality of time that I would have with Lily. And so with your kids, what I've realized over the years is it doesn't matter the quantity of time that you spend with them. What it really is more about the quality of time that you spend with them. And yes, quantity is great too, if you can do it. However, I'm also a big believer that too much quantity of time, too much time with your kids is also a bad thing. It gets them too attached to you. It gets them too dependent to the family. And I've seen this with people where, some of my friends, that's how their families were, is like all the time, family time, 24/7, family. And it's like now, and the mom would do everything for them and do all this stuff. And they're so attached to their family that they can't leave the town that their family's in. They can't be away from their mom. They can't be away from holidays. I'm like, I don't want that for my kids. I want my kids to have freedom. I don't want them to have an attachment to me. However, I want to have quality time and great memories with my kids. And so what I've realized is that if you have 4 hours of disrupted time with your kids, it's not to the same level of 1 hour of present, undisturbed, dedicated time with your kids, of like deep actual conversations, playing the games that they want to play, having fun. The quality is the most important thing. And so what I've realized is having that dedicated time is far more important than, again, the quality of it. And this is another thing that I had to learn over the years, because it wasn't always like that. It was like, I would give time and I would go play with him, but it was just constantly like phone and text and Slack messages and this and that. And then even if I wasn't doing that, my mind, and that's the hardest part. The hardest part is getting your mind to become present and in the moment, getting rid of the overwhelm. Because what happens if you let the overwhelm come in? Oh my gosh, I have all these things to do on my checklist, and I have this going on and this going on. I have to do this, blah, 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 blah. And you're constantly in fear and worry. You know what starts to happen to the quality of the conversations you have with your kids? They go down the drain. Your patience goes down the drain, and you need patience if you're going to have kids. Your nervous system starts to get freaked out. So when one small thing happens with your kids, you snap at them. Even though you weren't on your phone, your mind was somewhere else. You snap at them. The whole hour that you're going to spend with them is now destroyed. And so for me, I'm always like, put this away. Or if I tell them like, hey, I have a really big project going on, there might be a couple messages that I have to check, but if you guys let me do that, then I promise you, as soon as that's done, the phone goes away. So even in those moments where there's like, maybe we're in the middle of a launch, I'm preparing them beforehand. Hey, we're going to spend 2 hours. We're going to go do this, this, and this. I'm just letting you know there might be a 5-minute time where I'm going to have to like check the phone real quick. And then if you guys give me that 5 minutes of uninterrupted time, like I'm coming back and I'm with you 100%. Like that's what we're doing. And you start to realize too, is like your kids may not like even want to spend all day with you anyways. Maybe when they're younger, but like when they start getting older, they want to do them like something like my kids, they want to go like have movie nights on Friday night, just the two of them up in the playroom. And they like, no parents allowed. I'm like, okay, great. So, you're not attached to us. I love that. Like go spend that time with your sibling, go do that. And so again, it's not about the quantity. It's really about the dedicated time of being present. Now to play off of this, there's one other area that I want to talk about on this subject, which is, this is all great and fine and dandy when you're like, okay, I'd sit here and tell you like, okay, have, dedicated quality, uninterrupted present time. But let's just be honest and real for a minute. We own businesses. And so like, we can't just simply check out sometimes. Like, clock's done. I'm out of here. Like you can't at another job. Like, my employees, when it's like 5 o'clock or they put in their hours, like they can just turn everything off and I don't expect them to be available. But you're the business owner and things are going to come up. And there are going to be nights where you're going to have to hustle your ass off and you're going to have to just like hunker down in the office and just get shit done. That's just the way it is. Like it's going to happen from time to time. So what I have realized is like, even during those moments, you can still be 100% present with your family. And it's about not compartmentalizing things. So when we're going through like a launch or something like that, like I tell my kids like, hey guys, we're going through a launch and I'm going to do my best to like be able to spend time with you and blah, 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 blah. But let's make plans for when cart ends. And we can like, well, what do you guys want to do? Let's do it. And then during this time, I'm going to have to like probably not be able to go for walks a couple times a week. And, I just kind of go through the rhythm with them and just let them know what's going to happen. But one of the things I realized, because during that period when we were working days, nights, all these hours when we launched the video Forex Effect, I just wasn't seeing my family as much as I had wanted to, or what I thought my life was going to look like. I just thought I was going to be like a totally present dad every day. We're going to go on adventures because the business is running itself. And we're kind of there now. But what I had to start doing was doing a better integration of the two, the business life and the family life. And so what that sort of looked like was like, I started to ask myself, well, where are the moments that you're not going to work during this day? What are those moments? So like, yeah, you're busy. Yeah, you're working morning and night, but you're not working 24/7. You still got to eat. You still got to go to the bathroom. You still got to shower. You still like, get some sort of exercise in. You have to do those things. So what I started to do was learn how to integrate those two things. So what we did is we actually did a lot of dinners at the office where my wife would come to the office with the kids and like we would order dinner at the office. They would come in and you know what? I'd go back to being dedicated and totally present in the moment. Business is done. It is done. I am not going to talk about it. We're going to be here with the kids. Or if I did talk about it, it was like because Jacqueline wanted an update or I would let the kids know what's going on. But I loved it because it integrated the family life with the business. And because there's some sort of integration, I was able to be fully present. So they would come to the office and I'd throw them in a chair and we'd run around the office in circles and I'd spin them. And honestly, it's like some of my favorite memories. It's like, when I had to, I remember one time we were building out the office and we had construction guys there and I had to go to the office. And like on a Saturday morning, it was supposed to be the time with my family, time with Will. I promised him time and got a call. I'm like, oh, God dang it. I got to go to the office because there's a problem. And so I looked at Will and I was like, hey, you want to go see a construction site? Threw him in the car and was totally present with him. And I brought him in and told him, hey, I'm going to talk to construction workers and had the conversation. And then he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was like, he's running through the buildings and the studs and going through the walls and like all of this stuff. And then him and I had great conversations and we got to play in the office. And so it's just this beautiful like blending and integration of the two things together. But the key thing here is you can blend and you can integrate, but you still have to be present. So when I was with him, I wasn't like worried and stressed and anxious about the office and the building and the cost and all that stuff. It was like, I'm going to have this conversation. I'm here with you. What do you think? What do you want to do? Oh, you want to run through the walls? Let's do it. And there was nothing else distracting me, fully present and in the moment. So number 3 is dedicate that time to be present. Even when you're busy, there's going to be moments where you can still spend it with the family if you really want to. Number 4 is understanding your stopping point. This one was a big one for me. So for 6 years, about 6 years, I had been building the business, nothing really working. And slowly, like we would, like make more and more money. So it was like one year we did 116,000, then we did like 175, and then we did 250, and then we did like 500, and then we did 800, and then we did like $1 million something, and then 2 million and whatever. And here's the thing that I realized about business is that things don't get easier when you make more money. And a lot of people do think that. They're like, as soon as I get to $1 million, like now I can have all the money in the world and all the time. It's like, well, yeah, but now you have more team to manage and now you have more expenses and there's more things that are going to pop up that you're just not expecting. I promise you that. The more money you make, and what was that? I forget whose song it was, but more money, more problems or whatever. That's really the way it is. It's like, once you get to a certain level and you want to go to the next level, it's going to break systems. It's going to break processes. There's going to be problems. You got to hire a team. So there's a lot more going and working, and there's more things to do and focus on. And so at some point, there has to be a stopping point. Because if you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, you're growing and you're like, okay, once I hit here, once I hit here, once I hit here, and you're finally there. And then you're like, okay, we got to go to the next level, the next level, the next level. Your life will not improve on the quality, meaning that you just aren't magically going to get your time back. So if you're constantly growing and breaking things and not putting the right systems and processes and things in place, it's going to take a toll on your personal life, the time that you have. So I realized when we got to about the 2.5 million mark, I was like, man, I haven't really lived the vision of what I wanted when I started this business, which was like time freedom, money freedom, all that. Like my expenses in my personal life got bigger. My expenses in the business got bigger, and we just kept going more. And then I stopped right when we were at about $2.5 million. And Taylor was basically running the company. The team was pretty much built. It wasn't much of a need for me. Things were great. And I stopped there and I just looked around and I was like, you know what? Life's good. I don't need to get to 5 million. I don't need to get to 10 million right now. I'm making $2.5 million with about $500,000 a year in profit. I'm working 10 hours a week. What more do you want? Like, you have everything that you wanted when you started this company. A lot of family time. I was working 10 hours. Like, as soon as my kids came home from school at 3:00, it was like, cool, we're playing, we're riding bikes, we're having fun in the backyard. Especially during COVID. I think COVID might even like further like increased me wanting to work less. And it was just an awesome time. And I realized I never really had a stopping point of like, when is enough? And so my default was to keep going for more and more and more. And I just stopped, and I was very intentionally, I think it was like 2019 or 2020, said, I don't, like, if we grow, we grow, but I don't really care if we don't. And I could have done things like, made Taylor in charge of like growth in the company and other things and bigger launches. And like, I just didn't want to, like, I don't like that would have taken work. And so everything was good. And so I intentionally stopped at 2.5 million. And I will tell you, it wasn't as easy as it may sound, because I was watching people like my buddy James Wedmore and Jim Fortin, who don't have kids, like just work on their business and grow. And I saw James go from like 2.5 to 10 million, like really quick. And then all of a sudden Jim came out of nowhere and he went from like 0 to like 8 million a year. And I was watching like Catherine Zinkina, who now has a kid, but didn't back then, like all of a sudden go from like, $600,000 launches to $3 million launches. And it was hard because you see all your friends go to these levels that you're not at. But I made an active choice of like, I could do that if I want to, but I'm not willing to give what it's going to take, because I want to spend the time with my family. I am at a reaching point. I am intentionally at a stopping point of where I want to be. And I'm going to stay here for a bit. I'm going to stay here for a while. And it was an amazing time. And we did a lot of trips. We did a lot of projects. We did a lot of things together. Some of the best memories of my life. Like every day I'm going for walks and hikes with my kids and my family. And it was amazing. And I think so many parents don't actually get to a stopping point. And a stopping point could be two things. Number one, time and money. How much money do you want to make after profit, like after expenses and all that stuff? And then how much time do you want? So you may get to, my process is always get to the profit you want first. So if you want to make $100,000 a year in profit, great. That's your stopping point. Once you do that, the next thing is your time. Okay, great. I'm at 100,000, but I'm spending 20 hours a week. Now let's systemize. Now let's delegate. Now let's build out a team, and let's give you that time back. So now we're going to start looking at the time, and you can start to build out the time. So profit first, and then it's going to be like, how do we build out the time and the structure? And you have to understand it's okay to stop at any level you want. You want to make, let's just say your expenses are $40,000 a year and you want to make 50. Great. You're profiting $10,000 a year. You're making 50 grand. If your quality of life is good at 40 grand a year and you just want your time to spend with your kids, there's nothing wrong with that. We have built and are raised and are sort of living in a culture that nothing is ever enough. It's more and more and more, bigger, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. You have these people coming in and like David Goggins and other people that are coming in and telling you that you're lazy, you're a piece of crap, and blah, 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 if you like aren't busting your ass every single day. And I look at that and go like, what a broken, terrible philosophy that we are considered lazy if we aren't working 60 hours a week, doing 25 marathons in a month, like David Goggins does. Now, I do believe that in order to get to that point, you can't be lazy. You're going to have to put in work. You're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to do the hard stuff, but it's your life. You get to choose what you want. You want to work 10 hours a week and not work out every day and have more time with your kids, then go fucking do it. Who cares? Like, that's your life. Go do it. And so that's what I had to do, is like, what's the stopping point? What do I want my life to look like? And how do I build that and not get so hung up on everything? Like, grow. Now, I will say that you can't get super lazy with business. You got to continue to evolve and grow. And so this period of like doing 2.5 million and whatever lasted for about 3 years for me. So the last 3 years, we haven't grown at all. And I've been very intentional and very strategic and very aware of what I was doing. Now, since you guys have heard listeners of the podcast, and you've heard the last episode that we did about our worst performing launch, the business required more of me. And so I had to get back to work and get my butt back into gear and start working again. And so that period of all that time off and, doing 2.5 million a year kind of like went out the window because of that last performing launch. So I had to get my butt back into gear, but I had 3 years of beautiful time. And now I have my next benchmark. My next benchmark is when the company's doing 5 million a year and we're profiting $1 million a year. I'm going to take, that's when I'm going to want to take another break. And maybe even before then, before we take that break, I might put someone in charge of the growth of the company to continue it and move myself out of that spot. And that's kind of what where Matt is right now too. So I'm already kind of thinking that way now, so that if I do like pull out of the business, it doesn't plateau us in growth. But again, I was very intentional with what we were doing. And I just don't subscribe to the fact that, like, especially if you have kids, you don't need to hustle your ass off. You don't need to make $1 million a year. You can make whatever the heck you want and spend your life the way you want to. Number 5. So let's just recap actually. Number 1 is that you will mess up, have compassion. Number 2 is let your kids in because they are watching, and make sure that they're watching the values and you're not indoctrinating them into certain paths. They can choose their own paths. Number 3 is dedicate time to be present and have that integration of business and life together. But when you're there with them, be as present as you can. Number 4, know what your stopping point is. And number 5 is going to be normal schedules are likely not going to work for you. And what that means is that's total like 9 to 5 and then you're done just doesn't work. So you have to find the schedule that works for you. And I'm just going to give you guys a breakdown of mine and how it's adjusted over the years. When we had one kid, I could do the 9 to 5 thing. That's totally fine. When he was just born, when my son was born, I actually ended up working at nights. And so my wife could sleep. So I would do the whole bottle thing and I would work at nights. And I would take him during the morning. So I would take him during the morning, then get a couple hours in, then take a break, and then I would work at nights. Then when he got old enough and my wife was able to stay home, I could do the 9 to 5 thing because she was taking care of him. But then when we started, like now, for example, we have 3 kids. They get home at 3. And for those of you who are parents, you know that like bedtime is going to be from like, for us, it's 5 to 9. So I know from 5 to 9, it's like dinner, baths, bedtime, books, stories, making lunches for the next day for their school. Like that's what my wife and I are doing from 5 to 9. So I don't have time to hang out with them. So I normally try to stop by 3. So I stop at 3, usually when they get home, and I go do something with them. And so I have like the hour or 2, 3 to 4 to do something before we start the whole dinner making process, cleaning, dishes, all that stuff. It's like a 4-hour process. So I also know that like in the mornings, I can't normally get started to about 10. So sometimes 2 days a week, I take them to school. I do the breakfast thing. The other days of the week, I sleep in, and so I have this weird flexing schedule based on the days that I take my kids to school and the days that I don't. So I normally try to work from like 10 to 3, which is 5 hours. And then if I need to, what I'll do is I will, once they're down at 9, I'll work at night. And the days that I work at night, sometimes I'll go to like, I don't know, 10 to 2 in the morning or something like that. Because I enjoy it. I enjoy working at night. I actually do my best to work at night. And then on those days, what I do is I line up the nights that I work with the next day. Like if my wife is taking them to school the next day and I don't have to get up with them in the morning, I sleep in. And then then I can start to work at 10 and I sleep in. And that's just the way it works. But I'm altering my schedule every day. It looks a little bit different to be flexible with what's going on in the family, how I want to work as well. Like sometimes I just won't even work during the day. And I know that I can work at night because my wife's going to take the kids to school next morning and I can sleep in. So again, when we have kids, when we have families and we're working in our own business, you're likely not going to have a normal schedule, and you shouldn't, because if you really want to spend the time with your kids, you're going to have to adapt to their schedule. It's just the way it is. They have school and they don't have really much flexibility, and everyone's on the same school schedule. They have nap time, dinners need to be done at a certain, it just, there needs to be structure in a family. There just always is. And sometimes that will disrupt the structure of your working hours. And the more you are able to flex and be flexible and move things around and whatever, and combine nights and days, the better it's going to be. In fact, I don't think I know a single parent entrepreneur who has a normal 9-to-5 schedule, unless you have like some sort of nanny or something like that. Number 6, I know I've been talking a lot about like putting family first, but sometimes the business is going to have to come first, and it is okay to sacrifice. So when I was working all those hours in the beginning, I was working a lot, like gone at 6 a.m. and not getting home sometimes till like 10 p.m. Like it was a lot. And it's, to me, and though during those days, that's when we would have the kids at the office, we would do the dinners, I would still see them, right, and do that stuff. And I would try to take weekends off as much as I could as well. But at the same time, it is okay to sacrifice. And I mean this in 2 ways. It is okay to sacrifice family and time temporarily for the business. At the same time, it is okay to sacrifice things in the business for the family. And I think what happens is people get too much on either side. I'm a big believer in the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine energy, a blending, a balance, and a dance of everything you got going on in your life. And when we start to give one thing too much, it takes away from the other. And there needs to be a beautiful blend and a beautiful dance. That's just the way life works. And I think there's sometimes we get so guilty or we feel so bad when we prioritize the business over family. But you know what? That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And it is okay. Here's what I have known and what I have done is that when that time is coming or when that time is happening, open communication is the best. Honesty upfront. Here's what I am explaining to the kids, explaining what's going on. Here's what I'm dealing with. Is it okay with you guys if I do this or prioritize this? Or like, it's going to be like a month and then we can analyze and blah, blah, blah. And just like have this open, honest, integral conversation of what's going on. At the same time, it's like, you know what, if there's stuff going on in the business and you're like, I just don't want to deal with this, I'd rather be with my family, that's okay too. You have to do that with the understanding of what you're sacrificing. So you're sacrificing some family time for the business, which will ultimately, hopefully give you back more family time. But at the same time, if you choose the family over the business, you have to understand you're sacrificing profit in the business or growth in the business or whatever. And that's fine too. Everything is okay. And that leads me to lesson number 7 is that integrity on your word is everything. Integrity with my team, integrity with my kids. If I tell them I'm going to do something, then you know what? I'm going to do it. Even if that means I'm going to skip a deadline. If it means I'm going to be out of integrity with my team, you know what I do? I go to my team and say, hey guys, here's what's happening. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. And that happened last week. Last week I had to go to Santa Fe to pick up a new family car with my wife. And I promised my team I'd get them a podcast episode last week. What didn't happen? There's no way I could do it. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my sleep in order to like pump out a podcast episode. And so sent the team a message and I said, here's the deal. I can't do it. I'm choosing to go down to Santa Fe, or I'm going to do an extended weekend. I'm going to spend the time with my wife because we don't get a lot of one-on-one time. I'm not going to do the podcast. It's not going to happen. But here's what I'm going to do. I apologize. Again, going back to the apologize thing. I apologize that this happened. I'm going to do it on Monday. It's going to get done. I will give you another episode and here's the plan moving forward. And there was no issues. But it's all about integrity. It's about doing what you say you're going to do. And if you're not going to do it, then having that open communication about what's going to happen. You guys will not believe the difference it makes. Right now, my kids, when they're used to this style of communication, they're used to me apologizing. They're used to me 95 to 99% of the time sticking to my word. They're used to that. So this communication is easy. They don't freak out. They don't flip out. They know, okay, this is what's going on in dad's life. I talk about how I'm feeling and what's going on. And I ask them if it's okay if I do X, Y, and Z. Are they cool with that? 99% of the time they say, yeah. I'm integral with what I'm going to say. If I tell them I'm going to do something after that, then I do it. Even if something comes up in the business, I don't care. Reschedule it. Let's move it. Let's do it. Let's change it around. Let's That's just the way it goes. So integrity on your word is everything. And when you model that for your kids, you will be surprised at how they start to model that back to you. Or if they don't, and you bring it up to them, you'll be surprised at how fast they go, you're right. And especially with my son being 9, he promises to do X, Y, and Z, go out and clean up the dog poop or something, and does it. And I said, hey, Will, you told me you were going to do this and you didn't do it. And he goes, oh, I was playing a game, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I know, but Will, like when I tell you I'm going to do something, I either do it or I tell you I'm not going to. So next time, just tell me you're not going to do it. And he's like, you know what, Dad, you're right. And I said, so when's a good time that we can go and clean up the dog poop? He's like, I'll just do it right now. So that's there's no fighting. There's no yelling. There's no stress. There's no like nervous system getting thrown off. It's just simple. It's easy. It's honest. It's integral. It's like pure communication, and it's beautiful. So integrity on your word. And the most important thing with kids, and this one breaks my heart, is when I see parents not letting their kids be themselves. I'm an entrepreneur. Like I said earlier, not all my kids are designed, wired, born to be entrepreneurs. They have their own dharma. They have their own purpose. They have their own path. What I want to do is instill values in them that will allow them to be successful no matter what route they go. It is not my job to make sure that they are entrepreneurs. It is not my job to tell them who to be. It is not my job to show them what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And it's not our job as parents to tell our kids who they are. You yourself are your own person. And we talk about this inside our program. Remember who you are before the world told you who you are. The last thing your kids need is a parent who's going to tell them who to be. I let them be them. I don't indoctrinate them to entrepreneurship, but I expose them to the path because no one else will. The school system's not going to show them how to be an entrepreneur. That's even a thing. In fact, the world actually tells you that entrepreneurship is risky, and it can be, but so is anything. There's nothing guaranteed in this life. Your job's not guaranteed. Your career's not guaranteed. There's no guarantee that the company you work for is going to stay around. There's no guarantees in life. But for some reason, the system is set up to not show kids to be entrepreneurs or to be a YouTuber or to create content or start an Airbnb business or to invest. There's none of that is shown to them. There's nothing wrong with exposing them to all of that because the world's going to do it whether you're part of it or not. The world's going to expose them. It's what the world is going to expose them. And the one thing that I know is that the way the world is set up is it leads a lot of people to be very unhappy. So you can expose them to so many different things, but it is not your job to tell them who to be or what path to take. It is theirs. So the way I look at it is I let my kids be kids. I expose them. I will to entrepreneurship. I will talk to them about different options, and then I let it be. And I talk to them about things that I learned or failure, and I talk to them about lessons that I learned that are going to help them no matter what path they go down. And I also let them know that this is the path that I chose, but it doesn't have to be the path that they choose. However, if they do choose it, I can help them, but I will help them no matter what path they go down. So the biggest thing is it is hard because we want to be entrepreneurs. We want our kids to be entrepreneurs. We want them to be successful. But again, it is not our job to choose their path. We don't know their dharma. We don't know their purpose. It could be your kid's dharma to be poor their entire life to learn those lessons. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, they probably grow more from those lessons than we will as being, successful entrepreneurs. And you have to be okay with letting them choose the path that they want. Again, it's about exposing them to paths, letting them choose, but instilling those values that will make them successful no matter what. That's my philosophy on raising kids. And that's my philosophy with family and business. And so those are the 8 lessons I've learned from raising a family while building a multimillion-dollar business. I hope it was valuable for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this, please let me know. Hit me up on Instagram. We do have more interviews coming up with parent entrepreneurs to talk about their journey of raising kids while building a business. And so if you enjoyed this, please let me know by leaving me a message on Instagram. Believe it or not, people actually do leave me DMs on Instagram, letting me know how much they enjoyed the episode. I'm not asking you to share it. I'm not just give me your feedback if you enjoy this and you want more, because I am very clear on which episodes seem to be resonating and which ones aren't. And because of the feedback. So send me a DM, let me know. And if you haven't left the review on iTunes, go ahead and do that now. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.